open-ups. He don't want easy fights. He wants the big boys. He wants the guys that are going to challenge him and going to bring danger. He wants to prove the people that he's the best. And he will prove it, and he will look badass with these guys.
Boxing has always been one of those sports where a single interview can feel more intense than the fight itself. And that's exactly what happened after David Benavidez began calling out Oleksandr Usyk following the Zurdo Ramirez bout. But when Usyk responded, it didn't sound like the usual fight hype or promotional trash talk. Instead, it came across like a calm warning from someone who genuinely thrives in chaos. Now fans are asking the same question. Did Benavidez just target the one fighter nobody should ever provoke? And what exactly did Usyk say that instantly made the boxing world uneasy?
Was undisputed in the cruiserweight division before coming up to the heavyweight division and becoming undisputed there. So, the thing is, does Benavidez want to go up to heavyweight, go up even more in weight, which he already did 25 pounds to go up to cruiserweight, and then go up more to meet Usyk there? Or will Usyk be coming down to cruiserweight?
Nobody expected the conversation to escalate this fast after such a dominant victory. In boxing, fighters are usually still processing the moment and celebrating the win, while the internet is already rewriting their future for them. Within hours, fans had pushed the discussion into entirely different weight classes, matching fighters against opponents they haven't even had time to think about, let alone prepare for.
Usyk fight is one of the biggest fights of this decade right now. Take it while it's hot. Don't play with him, and don't let him play with you. It is not smart for David Benavidez to give Jai Patai a shot at his name right now because he's hot right now. You go up and fight Usyk while you're hot, and it makes sense. You can always come back down and fight Patai if you want to. You understand? If you lost to Usyk, Patai fight still there. If you lose to Patai, Usyk fight gone. So be smart about this thing. Go take Usyk.
I said after the fight this past Saturday, after I witnessed what David Benavidez did, I said that I'd pick David Benavidez to beat most heavyweights. Not all, but most. And definitely not Usyk. Would I like to see it? Yeah, but there's fights that I like to see a lot more. For example, Bivol at 175, Jai Apataya. So would I like to see him move up to heavyweight to fight Usyk? Yeah, I think it would be fun. I think it would be a fun fight to make. But I would much rather see him fight Bivol or Jai Apataya.
But immediately after David Benavidez delivered a statement win against Zurdo Ramirez, the usual flow of boxing politics suddenly took a strange turn. Instead of focusing on the familiar names around super middleweight or light heavyweight, his camp introduced an idea that felt almost unreal. Rather than discussing expected matchups, they began bringing up Oleksandr Usyk's name, as if they were challenging the very limits of what was possible.
The fans are going to win on that one for sure, but I got to say, the way Benavidez is looking, I think that got to lean towards him.
He could do, think about, hold on, wait, what did I just hear? Yeah. Think about what we just said on this show. And guys, it's with the caveat that he had the right guy in front of him, right? Zurdo at cruiserweight. Yeah. But I have said so far in this show that Benavidez has to be in the conversation, considering he did it at 200 pounds, for fastest combination puncher of all time. Mm-hmm. Devin is saying that's a hell of a fight, him and Usyk. Teo just came out and said he'd lean Benavidez against the heavyweight champ.
And also, Usyk is turning 40 next year?
Yeah, he's 38.
That matters. Okay, 38, 39, 40, that's close. That's 40 years old, that matters. And the speed thing, Usyk's always fighting guys, he's faster and quicker.
And they were not talking about it in some casual, maybe someday type of way. This felt serious. It was bold, direct, and incredibly ambitious. The kind of call-out that instantly makes promoters sit back, pause for a second, and wonder how this conversation suddenly became so real.
David Benavidez to fight Oleksandr Usyk in 2027 for the heavyweight championship of the world. That is an absolutely insane fight. I know David Benavidez is very big and very fast, and Usyk is small for a heavyweight in the modern times, but I know David Benavidez just did the jump from light heavyweight to cruiserweight, but the fact that he was a light heavyweight at all, and before that he was 168, jumping all the way to heavyweight, like that's Roy Jones shit. I could see him jumping to heavyweight and fighting like a lesser champion.
The timing alone made the entire situation feel surreal. Benavidez had just reminded everyone why he is considered one of the most dangerous fighters across multiple divisions. But instead of settling into the usual conversations about titles, rankings, and expected opponents, his team suddenly looked higher, directly toward the heavyweight division, where every mistake carries serious consequences and the power difference becomes impossible to ignore. And that is where Oleksandr Usyk enters the story. A fighter who has completely redefined what dominance in modern boxing looks like. He conquered the cruiserweight division, became undisputed, then moved up to heavyweight and did far more than simply survive. He outclassed massive opponents who were supposed to be too powerful, too experienced, and physically overwhelming for anyone coming from a smaller weight class. When Benavidez's name was connected to Usyk after the victory, some fans dismissed it as typical post-fight hype. But others noticed something more serious. The confidence behind the call-out did not feel random or emotional. It sounded calculated, almost like an idea that had been discussed privately for a long time and suddenly became public much earlier than expected. Then came Usyk's response, or more accurately, the tension before he responded at all. Because Usyk does not operate like most fighters. He does not chase attention, and he rarely jumps into loud exchanges just to dominate headlines. But when he finally speaks, his words usually carry far more weight than people expect, even when he delivers them calmly.
After what I seen last weekend, David Benavidez beats Oleksandr Usyk at heavyweight. Believe it or not, there are people that actually believe that David Benavidez beats Usyk, and it's like, bro, that's simply just crazy talk. I mean, I get it, Benavidez is a great fighter, but as of right now, he just got the cruiserweight, hasn't fought Alpataya yet, hasn't fought Bivol, hasn't fought Beterbiev, fights that we actually want to see. And the thing is, I do think Benavidez is crazy enough to take on that challenge against Usyk, but as of right now, that would be a huge mistake for him. Truthfully, Usyk already has his own battles to take care of at heavyweight, taking on guys like Caballal, Wardley, Itama. Those are all way more realistic fights for him right now. One thing to mention though is the fact that David already said it's going to be about 5 years before he goes to heavyweight. But the thing is, with Turkey involved, adding a lot more money to the table.
In this situation, what made everything feel even more intense was the fact that Usyk stayed silent for so long. As Benavidez's name began surfacing in heavyweight conversations, Usyk was already consumed by something far more immediate. His full attention was locked on preparations for a massive showdown against Rico Verhoeven, a high-profile spectacle set near the pyramids of Egypt, an event combining boxing pressure, worldwide attention, and an unforgettable historical setting. For Usyk, this was not the moment for distractions. Every ounce of focus was directed toward an opponent who brings a completely different kind of danger into the ring. And that is why his lack of response at first felt less like avoidance and more like controlled restraint. Because in boxing, silence is rarely meaningless. More often, it signals calculation. At the same time, the discussions around Benavidez kept growing louder. Fans debated whether he could realistically handle the size, pressure, and physical demands of the heavyweight division. But inside Benavidez's camp, the confidence never seemed to fade. His father spoke about him as a fighter who overwhelms opponents not only with physical punishment, but with relentless mental pressure that slowly destroys their rhythm until survival replaces strategy. And they made it clear that their ambitions had already moved beyond the normal limits of the sport. In their eyes, the traditional list of opponents was starting to feel too small. The usual names were no longer enough to match the goals they had for his career. According to them, this was no longer simply about collecting belts. It was about building a legacy so massive that it forces boxing into conversations far beyond the boundaries of a single division.
You beat Usyk, you don't never have to see Battalion unless he want to come to heavyweight. Now he can go super middleweight, light heavyweight, cruiser heavy. Why would you play with a guy who's just as dangerous as Usyk, not as known as Usyk, not going to bring you as much money as Usyk, when you can just go straight to Usyk? That's kind of crazy. In a boxing ring with those 10-ounce gloves on, anything can happen. And that's my words to David Benavidez, because I know he listens to me, he looks up to me, thinks a lot of me. I'm going to tell him it's okay to say, no, Patai, you haven't proven yourself right.
That is where the debate became even more controversial, because the moment people start talking about legacy, comparisons are inevitable. Very quickly, the discussion shifted toward names like Canelo Alvarez and whether this new generation of fighters is beginning to redefine what it truly means to be the face of boxing. Some fans viewed the confidence coming from Benavidez's camp as pure disrespect, while others saw it differently. To them, it sounded like the mindset of a fighter who has already outgrown the challenges around him and is now searching for something far bigger. But boxing has never rewarded ambition on words alone. It forces fighters to prove it. And that is exactly why the Usyk matchup creates such a complicated conversation. The issue is not just the size difference. It is the timing, the style clash, and the skill set involved. Benavidez fights with relentless pressure, rapid combinations, and a non-stop pace that overwhelms opponents over time. If that kind of volume and aggression carries effectively into heavyweight, it could create problems that raw size alone may not solve. But critics continue pointing to the harsh reality of heavyweight boxing. It is not simply a larger version of the lower divisions. It is an entirely different world where one mistake can instantly erase rounds of dominance. That is why even respected voices throughout the boxing industry remain divided, with reactions ranging from excitement to serious skepticism.
Ali Shiki, chill. Usyk is bigger than Benavidez. Usyk will not stand in front of Benavidez and take all those combos. Is a great counterpuncher, elite footwork, will literally keep distance controls and counter Benavidez all night until he gets TKO like the ball.
Usyk.
It's probably like about a 10%.
It's not zero.
It's not zero. Yeah, it's a higher percentage than Canelo. To be honest with you, so
I was gonna get to him.
Usyk definitely in the future, but first things first, Usyk is I give my respects to him. He's an all-time legend, and it would be an honor to fight him in the future.
At the same time, there was also an important point being acknowledged. Fighters like Benavidez are not viewed as ordinary challengers. His style alone has the potential to create serious problems for even the most established champions, especially those who depend heavily on timing, movement, and distance management to control fights. And that is where the conversation becomes truly fascinating, because boxing fans are obsessed with hypothetical matchups almost as much as the fights themselves. Once the debate exploded across social media and boxing forums, it quickly divided into two completely different perspectives. One side believes stepping into Usyk's world too soon would be an enormous career gamble, the kind of move that could destroy years of carefully built momentum in a single night. The other side argues the exact opposite. To them, avoiding elite-level challenges completely contradicts what makes a fighter special in the first place. Then the discussion evolved into something even more analytical. Commentators and fans started breaking down the possibility of crossover success by comparing styles, past examples, and historical weight jumps throughout boxing history. But while the public continues debating fantasy scenarios, Usyk himself appears focused on something far more immediate. Right now, his attention remains fixed on the challenges directly in front of him. His preparation for major upcoming events reflects a fighter who is still fully committed to active dominance inside the ring, not someone interested in slowing down for legacy-driven exhibitions or theoretical superfights.
If he were to retire and the belts got split up, he could pick one of those off. But fighting Oleksandr Usyk, I don't care what age he is. If you give Oleksandr Usyk all of the advantages he already has, plus now he's not the massively smaller man, I don't see David Benavidez as great as I think he is. We have weight classes for a reason. And I don't see him really standing a chance there. And maybe if this is next year, maybe Oleksandr Usyk ages and he just falls off a cliff. I mean, if he does it, that's some all-time great shit.
At one point, when asked about what comes next, Benavidez himself brought a surprisingly grounded perspective to the conversation. He admitted that while a potential clash with Usyk is an interesting idea, there are still major steps required before anything like that becomes realistic. He pointed toward testing himself against other elite-level names first, specifically mentioning fighters like Dmitry Bivol and Artur Beterbiev. In his view, those matchups would serve as the true measuring stick, the fights that would determine whether his dominance can actually carry upward into higher levels of competition. That level of honesty added another layer to the debate, because it showed that even within the ambition, there is a clear understanding of just how steep the climb really is. Meanwhile, analysts continue to dissect the hypothetical matchup from every possible angle. Technical breakdowns, style comparisons, and statistical arguments all began circulating as fans tried to find logic in a fight that remains entirely theoretical. Some even reached back into boxing history, suggesting that in rare cases, style advantages can overcome size differences when timing and skill align perfectly. But that argument was quickly challenged by others who pointed out a far harsher reality. Heavyweight boxing often ignores romantic theories. At that level, physical power and single moments of impact can erase even the most carefully constructed strategies. Then came the most intriguing twist in the entire story. An industry leak suggested that influential figures within boxing's financial and promotional circles are already aware of the commercial potential such a matchup could generate. Reports circulating in insider discussions hinted that long-term planning conversations may already be considering a cross-divisional spectacle involving these names, potentially targeting a timeline around 2027, depending entirely on how both fighters' careers develop from here.
Yesterday, we see Turki Al-Sheikh tell his Ring magazine outlet that he's interested in you versus Usyk. What do you think of that?
As of me, for having a competitive spirit, definitely does interest me. You know, like I said, at the end of the day, you don't know what's possible until you make it possible. You know what I mean? And a lot of people think I can't beat Usyk, but if I really put my mind into it and, you know, train for maybe like a year, because I barely came up to cruiserweight, I can't just go up to heavyweight like that. But if I train myself and I prepare myself, I could beat anybody in the world. But I'm never going to say never, because maybe in the future when I'm like 35, we could go up to heavyweight, but right now I'm really just taking care of the cruiserweight and the light heavyweight division.
That kind of timeline changes the entire conversation, shifting it from immediate fantasy into something that feels like a long-term possibility. It also helps explain why neither fighter is in a rush to force it. Usyk has immediate commitments that demand complete focus, while Benavidez is still in the process of building the kind of heavyweight credibility required to make that leap feel legitimate in competitive terms, not just promotional hype. And yet, despite all the logic that points toward patience, boxing fans rarely think in terms of waiting. They think in terms of curiosity. They want to see what happens when relentless pressure collides with elite-level control. They want to know whether volume punching can disrupt precision at the highest stage. They want to find out if size, skill, and timing can ever truly reach a balance when neither fighter is willing to give an inch. That is exactly why this conversation refuses to fade away. Beneath all the analysis, predictions, and promotional speculation, there is still one simple question driving everything forward. What would actually happen if David Benavidez stepped into the ring with Oleksandr Usyk at the peak of their abilities? Until that question is answered inside the ropes, every call-out, every warning, and every moment of silence will continue to feel like the beginning of something far bigger than a standard boxing matchup.
I mean, the Mexican Monster's just become the unified cruiserweight champion of the world, and now we're talking about a super matchup in the heavyweight division? Boxers going crazy. Now, David has a long list of potential matchups in the light heavyweight division, such as your Artur Beterbiev and, of course, Dmitry Bivol. And in the cruiserweight division, none other than the man himself, Jai Pitaya. But a showdown against Oleksandr Usyk? Don't get me wrong, guys. It's intriguing, but did I opt for this? Nah. As for Oleksandr Usyk, there's other matchups that I need to see him take on first. I mean, the winner between Dubois versus Fabio Wally, or even Ajay Kabayel. But if Turki Al-Sheikh wants a matchup, most of the time, he gets it done. And don't get me wrong, guys. If this ever materializes in 2027, it will draw eyes from all over.
And right now, boxing is doing what it always does when it senses something both dangerous and exciting on the horizon. It watches closely, waits patiently, and argues loudly, while the fighters themselves continue moving in silence toward their next inevitable collision. Because while the boxing world keeps debating in endless loops, the real story is unfolding away from microphones and social media noise, where timing carries more weight than opinion, and patience can be just as powerful as any punch thrown inside the ring. Usyk, at this stage, remains locked into his immediate priorities. Every fight he takes now comes with a different kind of pressure. It is no longer just about showcasing skill, but about maintaining control over a legacy already ranked among the most respected in modern boxing history. That is why every move, every decision, and every potential next step is calculated with surgical precision. On the other side, Benavidez is operating in an entirely different rhythm, one driven by momentum, ambition, and constant forward pressure. His rise through multiple divisions has created a rare situation where confidence is no longer just personal belief, but something the public now expects to see delivered. Fans are no longer simply asking if he can dominate where he is today, but how far upward he is willing to push that dominance before reality finally pushes back.
What do you think about the fight, Mike? Great fight. Lived up to the nickname, didn't he? He did well. Right here. Mike, so after Benavidez's performance tonight, the next thing for Benavidez is what? You want to see him unify the division, go down to light heavyweight?
I want him to be where he feels comfortable at.
Did you talk to him before the fight? And if you did, what advice did you give him?
Yes, he's a great fighter. He knows what to do. I didn't have to give him any advice, but he fought great tonight.
Appreciate you, Mike. Thank you.
That contrast is exactly what keeps this entire conversation alive, because what's really being discussed here isn't just a potential fight, but a clash of timelines. One fighter is in the process of defending a legacy that already feels complete, while the other is still actively constructing his in real time, step by step, fight by fight. And somewhere between those two realities lies an uncomfortable truth about boxing. it never accelerates greatness just because the audience wants it. It waits. It waits until both fighters have been pushed, tested, exposed, and proven enough for the moment to feel undeniable rather than forced. Oh, for now, the idea of Usyk versus Benavidez exists in that unusual space between speculation and inevitability. A space where every victory, every pause, and every call-out quietly adds another layer to a fight that may still be far from the schedule, but is already very real in the conversation.